as great as it's made out to be. But yeah, yeah,
Completely agree with that.
yeah.
I find it to be one of the
Yeah. But I guess it has its uses. So it's, yeah. Okay, it's, yeah.
Okay, you are from Al Jazeera, and you're broadcasting from. You're based in Lebanon.
No, I'm Lebanese.
Okay.
I work for Al Jazeera.
Okay, and where are you based?
I'm based in Doha, Qatar.
I heard the end of the last panel. It was very empowering.
No, it's a good group of
Having some
people.
fun,
So,
right?
yeah.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Good to see so many women here. Now I know why they are not in the Congress Center, because they are all here. Did you know that the WEF is proud that they are having 27% of women this year as participants? 27. I'm so happy to host this panel. We have Sonia here, we have Jean, we have Gloria, and we have...
Rada.
Excuse me, I'm not that good with names, but I will know them by the end of the discussion. We are here to discuss about media and freedom and the new era for democracy. And what I'd first like to know from all of you is like, what is your goal for this week in Davos? And how do you see the role of media here in this week? Do we just have? Oh no, we have a second one. Great. So, okay. Who'd like to start, Jean or Gloria? Okay.
Well, I think the role of media at Davos, and this is my first year at Davos, is not to treat women as the tokens here. We're not the odd ones out. It has to be, women have to be normalized as leaders, whether it's leaders as political leaders, whether it's as business leaders. So I think we don't have to look for the woman in the room. We have to look for the best person in the room. And I think all of us know, who are journalists on this panel, that the empowering aspect of media is that you truly do feel that it's gender neutral, it's gender blind, that you're where you are because of the hard work and merit you've put in. You're not a token presence. I think media has done that. I haven't seen that in many other industries, but at least in Indian media, I think women have played a very powerful role by the fact that they're there because of their merit and not because of their gender. And I think at Davos as well, and when we look at coverage of it, we have to look for women because they're the best speakers, the most articulate, the most intelligent. And I think once the media realizes that, it'll be a great step forward.
Did you accomplish that so far here?
So here so far, the business leaders who've come, we've interviewed a lot of Indians, and sadly, they've been men.
I don't know if this is my agenda here at Davos, but one of the things, just building on this conversation, is the importance of women in the media viewed as leaders, right? And we know the number's terrible here in Davos when it comes to 27%, but globally, the presentation of women as experts is only 24% in the media around the world, according to the Global Media Monitoring Project. That hasn't moved in decades. And so despite a commitment to do better by media all over the world, it still isn't happening. So I think the challenge here in Davos is really, there are women experts in every field. We just saw it on the last, every field, and it doesn't take much work to find them, media. You just need to update your Rolodex. And so I think that's the challenge, is to sort of really encourage business leaders to encourage women to be their spokespeople in the media, and encourage media to reach out and make sure they're sourcing women.
We're definitely coming back how your organization is helping newsrooms to also like find these voices and to support, especially like in very conflicted areas. We're coming back to this later. So.
My name is Gloria Romana. I am actually president, executive president, and CEO of a company who work for the visibility leaders, female leaders, and to give courses and programs for leaders, girls leaders for the future. In Spain, our work now is more than a brand, is a strong hashtag, and we have many editions. And before, I was working in journalism for a long time, almost 40 years, and as a managing director in the main private TV in Spain for 16 years. So my experience in the journalism and now working with female leadership and specific girls is a good occasion to explain our work and motivation more women and men to work for the equality, for the gender equality, who is now, I think, more necessary than now. And it's, as my colleagues, the first time that I am in Davos, and I want to appreciate, I am glad to be here with these colleagues and with all you. Thank you.
Thank you. Cara?
Thank you, Fabienne. Actually, I expect from Davos to address the problems we have in the Arab world and in the Middle East. And because I am a journalist who faced many problems due to inequality between men and women, not only as a journalist, but as a citizen in this part of the world, I want to take advantage of the events here in Davos to address the problem of journalism in the Middle East. And it's all related, actually, because journalism become, with time, weaker because of the economic crisis and because of the financial problems. So it's all like a vicious circle. The more you have economical problems, the more the journalism becomes less of a journalism, less real journalism. It becomes more of a tool for dictatorships, for authoritarian regimes, and it becomes more of a propaganda or a tool to oppress people, and people, I mean here people, men and women, but because women are more vulnerable, they will be the first to be attacked, and the discrimination will be much more violent towards them.
Do we have other journalists here in the room? Not too many, right? Yeah. Okay, so maybe you could elaborate on what it means to be a journalist, a female journalist in the Arab world. Maybe you could like share a little bit from your daily life, what your experience.
Oh, that's a big question, and it's very complicated.
Maybe you have one anecdote which really shows like for like how media is restricted, but also how you were maybe prevented as a woman to do your job.
Well, I don't know if I can reveal what just Rupa told me. I don't know. But for example, there are some affiliated media with regimes in the Middle East who asked Rupa if I'm going to be here, if I'm going to speak. And that means that either they want to silence me because they don't want for me to participate, or they are afraid of what I'm saying, of what I will say, or what I will reveal, or both. So this is, you know, the latest update or the latest example of what means to be a journalist, especially a female journalist, an independent one, in the Middle East. And now I'm being emotional about it because it was not easy. I didn't have an easy career, an easy life there. You have to fight every day. And I have been fighting for 20 years, more than 20 years now. I started my career in Lebanon. I grew up during the Civil War, and it was, you couldn't find an independent journal, media outlet or newspaper where you can know what's going on and affecting
why you
your
became a
family,
journalist?
your security.
Is this why you became a journalist?
Well, at the beginning, I hated politics. And when I thought of journalism, I said, no, it's really dirty. I don't want to have this kind of life. But then it happened because this is what, it was like fate, you know. I wanted to do something else, like being, you know, a director, cinema. I loved TV. I loved cinema. But because of the situation in Lebanon, we don't have the, you know, this luxury of you know, achieving your dreams as a little girl. So it was actually my mother's choice, because she knows me well, because she knows what we have suffered as children in the Middle East. In Lebanon, I have lived under bombs. They have put, you know, bombs under my classroom. And I saw bodies, I saw dead people around me. So I was affected, and it, you know, it built my character a bit. Sometimes people might say I'm a bit tough or aggressive, but it's the way I was raised in a hostile environment. It was not only a patriarchal system, it was not only a corrupted regime, it was not only a regional conflict between Israeli occupation and Palestinians. You live all of that. And I end up by choosing journalism. Although I was angry inside of me, I was really angry of having this traumatized childhood because of bombs, because of, it was not a normal childhood. So I think I went to the University of Journalism in Lebanon because I wanted to know what's really happening. And I wanted to tell people how politicians are, you know, destroying their lives, their daily lives. I tried my best, but it was not easy. It took all my energy. It was very stressful. And finally, I ended up working in Al Jazeera in Doha. And that became more complicated because Al Jazeera is the most powerful media in the Arab world and sometimes even in the world. So now you have more enemies. In Lebanon, it was local. In Al Jazeera, you became regional and you became even universal. So whenever there's a conflict and you cover it in a very unbiased way and objectively, people won't be happy with you. And when I say people, I mean regimes. I mean states, governments. And, you know, it's escalating from being, you know, just talking about controversial politics in a local country like Lebanon, small country. Now it's escalating to another level where you have regimes around you who won't be happy with your questions. And I had asked many questions that were the main reason for the attacks I had, the character assassination I went through. It's a long story. I was hacked. My phone was hacked. I was a victim of a spyware. And I don't think anyone should go through this. But I'm happy I'm here with you to tell you about my story, to tell you that even now, while I'm speaking, there are people who are monitoring and surveying what I'm saying in order to try to attack or to smear me on Twitter, on social media, and they are still doing that. Before I came here, I was in Washington, and I moderated a panel about Yemen. And imagine the attacks I had just for asking questions. I was moderating, I wasn't giving even a personal opinion, and yet I was attacked, smeared, etc. So this is being a journalist in the Middle East, and it's a fate.
Mm-hmm. Jean, are these stories which you hear every day?
I was going to say, I think you're capturing really, which is very, very clear, that for a woman to be a journalist, again, anywhere in the world, but certainly harder in some places than others, the attacks on women online can often turn into offline attacks. It's a very, very dangerous profession, a very emotionally devastating profession. I will say that that's all the more important why women should be involved in media, so we can sort of try to normalize it more. But your story resonates, and I've heard it all over the world. Yeah.
How are the attacks similar for women, for female journalists, than they are for male journalists?
I mean, there's this whole new rise of things. I mean, disinformation has been a big conversation here at Davos. Gendered disinformation, where very specific attacks because of your gender, accusing you of all sorts of things. It's ugly, it's sexist, it's terrifying at some level. Physical violence threatened all of the time. And so the difference between comments and attacks between men and women is quite stark. And you can ask any sector of everywhere in the world, this is a common theme.
Yeah, please just take the microphone.
Sorry, I'd just like to come in on that because, of course, Gada, your story, and I compliment you for your courage and bravery. But it's true, even in India, you'll find that that the kind of attacks you get, I mean, it's very common for women journalists, including me, that any program you do, whatever may be, if someone doesn't like it, the comments will be about rape, about violence. Now, a male journalist will never be threatened with violence or any kind of rape or any kind of attack if they don't agree with what he says as part of his professional duty. And people don't seem to realize that women journalists are professionals. They're not people who have an agenda. They're not people who have an opinion. And these very vile attacks which come from men online, and I think social media giants bear responsibility for the fact that the amount of funding they have does not go into making the online world a safe world for women. And this has been proved in India with there was a study done which showed the barrage of hate which went of threats of sexual or physical violence against women journalists was much more as it was against male journalists. And I think this point also that she said, almost that in a sense that you gave an explanation for being aggressive. But it's not aggressive. Strong women are seen as threats. And to this thing, and especially when you're a woman journalist and you're a strong journalist, you're asking tough questions, it can be a regime, but it can also be somebody sitting in his drawing room who doesn't like that. And it's somehow treated on the same scale, and the amount of disinformation. I mean, I'm married to a person who's a public figure. Anything he does, I get attacked for. The sense of women having separate professional independent identities is something which I think is not recognized anywhere in the world. And in areas, in countries like India and countries like the Middle East, it's a different cultural context, and that is taken and used as a weapon. And I think in that sense, social media and the owners, the managements need to have a responsibility because they are stopping independent journalism.
Yeah. That is a very good point you're raising, and I actually wanted to ask you as a director for NDTV, do you have any policies or measurements in place to support your female reporters, for example?
No, absolutely, and I think that's an important point also because I think when we talk about women in media, I think it's very important to realize that women journalists are not models. That you don't think that they've come there because they look pretty. They've earned their place. They are professionals. They need to be treated like that. And I think and that's only done if they have leadership positions. Being an anchor is not what a woman journalist should aspire to. A woman journalist should be the person who's taking decisions. And I think those kind of decisions, and it's often very difficult to balance that because, if you have a young woman journalist coming to you and saying, I don't think I want to go for the story because, it's a war zone and I feel afraid. Now, you can't treat women journalists separately, but you have to take their concerns on board. And I think that's an important element also being a woman leader, that you have to be gender neutral, but you must also recognize that there are different challenges for women. For instance, when women have gone to war, they may find it odd to be, staying in a barracks with an all-male troop. How do you draw that line? How do you make sure that you are seen as leaving a path for future women generations and journalists? I think as a woman leader and as a woman director, I look at that very carefully, that every decision must be one which leaves a path for young women when they want to come into the profession and see where they can go.
I'd like to bring Gloria in here.
But it's the same situation in the Middle East Europe, in the South Europe, in the best place in the world to live, who many people said about our region. Because I remember when I was appointed as managing director in 24, many times the first question who other people, even other journalists, sent to me, asked for me. It was, why you, a woman? You are the first woman in as director in a channel TV in Spain. Yeah, me. But when I give interviews, the same was similar because I remember a terrible situation because I was giving an interview in another channel of TV when I was in a presentation about a book which I wrote, and a journalist, a man journalist, asked me, how your husband has influence to you about this work, about your book. So I shocked, but quickly I answered to them, and your woman about this question. Your woman told this morning who you have to ask to me because it was a scandal. And every time in all interviews, another journalist asked me about my reconciliation, my family work, my husband, my children, no about my work. So the situation now is different because I think we are advantaged, but not too much, because women have to make more effort to reach the top. In the education, I work with a girl who they reach the best qualification and the best results in their academic careers, but not when they joined in a company and have to do have to make a profession. Not it's very difficult to reach the top. Now, in the Europe, in the Spain, and I could be here represent Latin America too, because I work very next to girls from Latin America, and the situation is that media have to support our work. When we speak here, when we present a book, when we give an interview, in every event where we go.
Do you all see a difference in the stories brought up by female reporters, female journalists, than being brought up by men?
Not really. If you are a good journalist, it's not a matter of gender. But there are many stories related to women and to girls, at least in the region where I live and work, that are not covered well because most of journalists and reporters and editorial decision makers are men. So sometimes they don't see the different angles of problems in these countries, while a woman can be more sensitive to certain stories, and because she's a woman, she knows the problems of women and around her. So it's if you cover a story, well, if you are a good journalist, whether you are a man or a woman, you'll do a good job. But at the same time, sometimes men don't see all the subjects or the issues that are related actually to women and girls and the society. And it creates a large gap in the news and the in newspapers, at the TV and radio, and even on social media or other media outlets. So that's the gap created. Not big difference, and it depends on the skills. And women can have skills like men. I believe in equalities. So you can be as good as a man, and a man also can be. We're not enemies here, and we're not competing. We have to complete each other. Each one have a different maybe way of doing things, but it is it completes.
Level,
At the decision
level is
at
the
the
problem,
decision
you're
level,
saying.
that's the
Okay.
problem. Yeah, exactly.
My recommendation always has been occupied to put the center of the table, acts always tomar riesgos, take risks, and be self-confidence. This is why now, in my current position, I working in training girls, female leadership. It's necessary to train new and work thinking in new generation, because, for example, our students are 15, 16, 17 years, so it's very near to join in a company. It's not thinking for 20 or 30 years more. We are thinking very, very near of our situation now. So it's necessary to train these students, and then if has some 2 or 3 minutes, I would like to explain to you this program, because in Spain it's incredible. More now, only in 3 years, than students, the 600 students, chicas imparables. If I translate to English this meaning, it would be unstoppable girls. So they it's incredible to see them, the transformation. On the first day, they arrive many times timid, fairly, but on the end, they feel out of selves. For example, when we ask to them about the results, always together shout, we are chicas imparables, the end, the last day. So they has work in many abilities. She has discovered their skills that many times she think they don't have any specific skills, and it's possible to change the mentality and give more confidence, because many times women give negative answer when we have opportunities. It's necessary to reinforce, empower girls, and above all for us.
As in many industries, empowerment is a solution. But like when it comes to journalism, we have the we have the specific problem that even if we empower female journalists, even if we empower like female decision makers, in the end we have like we are looking at numbers, we're looking at clicks in journalism, right? And then like female stories, I don't know how you experience it, for example, Sonia, but like how well are female stories being read? And I mean not by female reporters, I mean like about women, about like female voices.
No, I think that's very important, and I think newsrooms need to guard against what's called clickbait journalism, where you give a sexy headline which may not even have anything very much to do with the story, and that's what gets the most views. So in fact, I've told our TV journalists that let's not try to look at whether your story is trending or how many likes you get, because especially after COVID, the stories which we need to tell, the fact that women have just dropped out of the workforce, they become invisible, the growing divide and how it's impacted them, that we have to make sure. Public interest journalism isn't always what interests the public. It's also about news that needs to be told because of the public interest of that. It's a public service almost. So I think that is one, every young journalist needs to know that they're not going to be judged by the trending nature of their stories, because often bad news doesn't trend, or facts don't trend, data doesn't trend. So we need to be very, very careful as newsroom directors, as editors, to make sure that that is not what your young journalists, in fact, young journalists should not be looking at how their stories do. That's the editor's problem. Also, I think one very important aspect when we look at women journalists or male journalists is, I made this point of gender neutrality. If you give women journalists story is about women, you do them a disservice. Give the male journalists the story to do about women. So if there's a new International Labour Organization report out which says that women have dropped out, let a man do that story. And if there's a war story, give it to all your reporters. Let the women volunteer. Send them if you think that they would, because that's what's going to shake up your newsrooms. When you don't think that, you start on a beat and the women will get some beat of, fashion or entertainment, and the men will get a beat of politics. I mean, I remember reading Barbara Walters just passed away, and that how when she first came in, the male anchor only agreed to co-anchor with her if she would ask the fourth question. He would ask the first three, and she would be number 4. And I think in so many newsrooms, that kind of power structure hasn't really changed. And I think that's, when we look at equality in newsrooms, I think we need to look at misogyny in newsrooms. Because remember, newsrooms exist as part of society. So if you come from a society, and many young women journalists in India, and I think many parts of the world, come where they really struggle to get there. They may be in areas where their brothers are favored over them. They may not have got the same level of education. And then they make it to a newsroom and they see those same attitudes perpetuated. Then it doesn't change anything. You need to, for the newsroom to be an equal place where they aren't told that you can't get a bite at the top story, that you can't do a lead story, or, you're just not important enough. So I think that's a very important thing. When we look at building newsrooms, when you look at women leaders, which all of us are decision makers, that's what the big change. We need to make sure that there are no silos where, these are stories a woman journalist can do and male journalists can't. So I think that's really important.
Jean, yeah.
I was just going to say, I totally agree with this. And the problem is not really women journalists, it's about sort of the decision makers. And women in editorial positions is appallingly low. We did a Gates Foundation commissioned a study of 6 countries, big media markets, that showed that like 1 in 6 senior editors are women, and it gets way worse when you're doing the hard news, the international, the finance, and things like that. So we definitely need to engage women at every level of the news cycle. It's critically important. And I do think, I hate to say this, but people need to count. I mean, they really do need to count. They need to count what their stories look like. They need to count how many women are experts. They need to count how many women are in their staff, because I think so many people aren't aware of how bad the problem is. And so my challenge to every newsroom out there, find all the different cycles of your news and count. Just count, and then make a commitment to change.
Are you having any data measurements in place for the newsrooms you're supporting?
I mean, we have a program we call Reflect Reality, which is about your stories should reflect reality. So it provides some tips as to how to do this. Spreadsheets that help you count. There's 2 sides of the equation too. There's the whole news cycle side, but then there's also the side of helping women experts feel comfortable speaking as well. Again, that threat against women journalists, public figures have it as well, as we know. And so sort of getting women the courage to speak up, and even within a company, sort of finding those women spokespeople who will step up and feel comfortable being the spokesperson for their industry. You need to work both sides, and so we've got some tools that we can help with that. But it's really important just to be stressing and encouraging and counting.
Yeah. But what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. That's the. I think that's a. Yeah.
One
please.
point to that, because we are slightly different, in fact, because we were started by a husband and wife co-founders, and I'm very proud to say we never counted, but at one time, our newsroom is woman majority, and at one time we had a situation where our 8 o'clock news and 9 o'clock news was done by women anchors. So that was something we were all very thrilled with, and I was the first woman editor-in-chief of a television network in India. So I think that's
Which
our
is a
bit.
major achievement.
Yes.
But the stories.
But we didn't
like,
count, but
yeah.
listening to you, I think maybe we need to now. We need
Yeah.
to start looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I work as at a business newspaper. It's very sad when we start counting, and we do, but it's very sad. I'd like to open up. We just have like maybe 2 or 3 minutes left, but if there are any questions from the audience, I'd like to, yeah?
This was an incredibly insightful panel. Thank you so much for your opinions and the strength that you have to hold every day to be able to hold your own in these same newsrooms with these centralized organizations. What are your thoughts on the new wave of what's happening with kind of the sense of self-reporting and these new platforms where everybody can essentially report the news from whatever channel that they want to do? And how do we better empower and encourage women to be just as vocal and give their perspective to the future generations?
Excellent question. Feel free to answer.
When you talked about encouraging women and girls to express themselves, actually, I realized after the attacks I had, that I got, like hundreds of direct messages from girls around the Arab world, the Middle East, saying, you are a role model. And that encouraged me. I mean, I didn't realize that I was empowering girls to fight back. And it's, it's a win-win game, because when they sent me these messages, they empowered me on their turn. And they also encouraged me to continue the fight and the challenge I was facing, I'm still facing. That's part of it. And about, everybody being a reporter, I think it's a disastrous situation. It's very chaotic. And that is the main reason behind fake news, misinformation, and disinformation. So we need professional journalists. We need men and women together on equal basis to report good reporting, professional one, objective, unbiased, to tell the world the truth. I know it's very hard to talk about objectivity, but at least you have ethics, you have editorial lines that you stick to these, and you have, you have been trained to cover a story in a way that you reduce to the minimum you're interfering in the story. While if you give the opportunity to anyone to tell a story, he won't tell you the story. He will tell you what he thinks, what he feels. But I need facts. People need facts. People need real journalism. So I think we need to do something about it. And the main problem here is also social media. It turned the world into a very chaotic place where you don't know which news is a real news, which news is fake. And I think what they did with Trump on Twitter, it tells a lot. And what happened during COVID, when they try to monitor what's written or what's published about COVID, it tells a lot. So if you measure what happened during COVID, measure it to your to any news that affects your daily life as a citizen where you are. And tell me what you think.
And so what I'm getting from your answer as a reply to this excellent question is like applaud women for being vocal, because women are like silenced a lot and women feel less confident to be vocal, so they have to be maybe empowered more, right? To be vocal on social media. Maybe we're taking one other question and then, yeah.
Thank you for everything you've shared. What I would love to know is, what can we do to help? How can we further the progress that you are so bravely making, and how, as absorbers of news and people in our everyday life, what can we do to help?
Can I quickly answer this? You can educate young men and boys to respect women and not to feel superior just because they are boys and men. I mean, it's also the responsibility of women, of mothers around the globe, to educate young boys and young men to respect women. It's to respect their gender, their sex, and to reduce misogyny and this men supremacy. This is from one side, and for the girls, we need to, as you said, empower them. So it's education for boys and empowerment for girls.
Thank you. I think Jean wants to add something.
And also, the news industry depends on you, so demand better. Just ask and say, hey, I'm not seeing what I want to see, so just keep demanding better.
And I think that it's necessary to vindicate the journalism, come back to the real journalism, because now in the social media drive many fake news, misinformation. So the populism is grown. The consequence, in my point of view, is the most terrible situation that we are seeing. The strong leadership, the strong man is advanced in the power. We are seeing in many countries, even in Europe, in Latin America, not only in the East or in China or in Putin, with the certain result that we are looking for the war Ukraine. So it's necessary to promote female leaders, because now, after pandemic and after the successive crisis, we need to look more human. The female leadership more emphatic with communication, with other way of look things. I think we, more than ever, we need female leaders now.
But coming back to this question, what can a normal reader and a normal viewer do? I might pass this question to Sonia, because what are you wishing for from your audience to support you in your progress?
I think the most important thing is to get out of echo chambers. I think the worst thing that's happening to news is it's now curated like a playlist. So you only want to watch opinions you agree with. You only want to hear about leaders who echo what you think is right. There's no room for diversity. There's no room for... I tell my young journalists that you have to follow 2 eyes and 1 E. You have to inform, you have to interest, you have to educate. Those are the 3 things a journalist should be doing. And that's what a viewer should be demanding. If you're going to insulate it to only hear the news you'd like to hear, you're doing yourself a disservice and the news business a disservice. So I think that's really important. Listen to diversity, listen to opinions, be a global news citizen. I think that's what I would say.
So that was the perfect last sentence, I think. Sonia, Jean, Gloria, Gada. As I said, I will have the names till the end of the panel. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your personal stories. Thank you for sharing the insights from the industry. Thank you all for being here, and yeah.
Okay, only a minute. We want to express our support to the women and girls of Afghanistan, of Iran, even men who are supporting their fight, all the women who are asking for elemental rights as health or education. I from Spain, in my case, always have my look to these women, because the situation now is terrible, and I think we can't achieve good results about the 2030 agenda of the GIS. So it's a bit.